Chapter 13, Green Shirt and Saffron Wet. Shoo! The second arrow came one after another like lightning, accompanied by the palpitating sound of entering flesh, shot into the middle-aged scholar's chest, where the arrow didn't come from. It was exactly where the first arrow broke open the green shirt and soft armor. The third arrow, as if it had no sequence, arrived again in an instant, also hitting the gaping hole that had been gradually widened, and there was no more obstruction before the arrow's blade, so it actually pierced through his body. No one knew how Ning had managed to shoot 3 consecutive arrows with that ordinary-looking boxwood bow in his hand in a very short flash of lightning, and even more so, no one could figure out why this seemingly ordinary young soldier had such terrifying archery skills that he had managed to hit the same very small area 3 times in a row. The middle-aged scholar felt a hard and thick wooden stick slam heavily into his chest and was shaken backward 2 steps by the hard shock. Then he felt his chest was a bit hot, and that heat even turned into a rolling heat in the end. He subconsciously looked downward and saw a feathered arrow enter without his chest. A small section of the arrow shaft and arrow feathers remained outside his green shirt, blood-infested, like a red flower blooming. The middle-aged scholar stared unbelievably at the wet red flower on the green shirt in front of his chest, and an absurdly dismayed look appeared on his blood-stained face. He slowly and powerlessly fell into a sitting position amongst the fallen leaves and rotting mud on the ground. Even a cultivator who used devilish means to absorb heaven and earth yuan qi into his body, had no way to continue manipulating his mind after his heart was shot through. The invisible thread between heaven and earth had screeched and snapped the moment he fell into a sitting position. The bloodstained broken finger that had lost control could no longer threaten an Yin master, even though that Yin master was now weak to the core. Lu Qingchen raised his eyebrows slightly and shook the broken finger in front of him away. The broken finger flew past his old face and landed on the carriage behind the old man, only to hear several crunching sounds. Half of the carriage collapsed and fell apart, turning into rubble. This broken finger was condensed with the middle-aged scholar's previous forced absorption of some slight heaven and earth yuan qi. Although it had already lost the control of his mind, it was still able to cause such a horrifying effect. Without those 3 feathered arrows, this severed finger would have definitely caused extremely serious damage to the old man, and then this assassination would definitely have come to a completely different end. The people who survived the scene were all very clear about this. The middle-aged scholar was naturally the one who understood the key to this the most. He painfully glanced at the arrow feathers in front of his chest, and with great difficulty raised his head, looking towards the back of the car formation, wanting to see what that archer actually looked like. Shooting the lightning 3 arrows at the most critical moment, forcing through the sophisticated light armor with strong and invincible archery, killing a great swordsmith in an almost unbelievable manner, saving the tide from falling, and saving Her Highness the Princess of the Great Tang in a time of peril. Is it time to enjoy the shocked gratitude and even admiration in the eyes of the crowd? Ning didn't think so, and without a trace of a relieved smile on his face, he was still gripping the boxwood hardwood bow in his hand, the arrow on the string drawn, aiming at the great swordmaster who was sitting in the skip under the tree, while his ears were listening to the slight sounds above the woods. He was on alert. Xiaoho! 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 After the servant girl had told him that the great swordsmith should be Xiaoho's subordinate, and the other party had admitted this earlier, Ning had been reciting the name silently in his mind. Xiaoho wasn't called Xiaoho so-and-so. His surname was Xiaoho. As one of the 4 most powerful king generals in the Great Tang dynasty, this man's martial arts skills were unrivaled, his war achievements were notorious, and his character was even more courageous and cold to the extreme. Stationed in the Mangliu camp with its strict military laws for years, and known for his arrogance and good killings in the world. His own original surname was Xia, but he did not allow his children to be surnamed Xia, but turned his full name into their surname, the eldest son Xiaoho Jing, the second son Xiaoho Fear, and so on and so forth. And when a certain maester in the court questioned it, Xiaoho Jia proudly responded, "I shall create a surname that will be passed down to the rest of the world, and I shall be the ancestor, and so shall be known as my name. It is the Xiaoho clan." General Xiahou was a celebrity, but Ning had been silently reciting his name in his mind, from narration to shock to faintly perplexed mockery, and naturally it wasn't because of that. From the time he was 4 years old, this name, which seemed to be covered in blood and water and spreading arrogant flames of light, had been tucked deep within his mind, never forgotten. He had never met Xiahou, but he knew Xiahou's likes and dislikes, knew who Xiahou's favorite concubine was, knew why Xiahou cooked that concubine, knew that Xiahou ate 3 pounds of the fattest mutton every meal, and even knew Xiahou's daily routine of going to the outhouse. He believed that he was the person in this world who knew the most about this famous Tang general, because he believed that there was no one in this world who wanted to kill this famous Tang general more than himself. Hidden under that general's domineering and rugged appearance was a cold and intelligent heart. Cold and cruel and good at killing was a fact, but this person would only ever trust his own hands. So he would never put all his ambitions to assassinate the princess in the hands of the green-shirt middle-aged scholar, a great swordsmith who was obviously not a full-fledged member of the family. That person would definitely send out his most loyal dead soldiers to keep an eye on the assassination, observe the developments, and possibly even jump out to end it all at certain crucial moments. In Ning's opinion, now was the best moment. Half of the carriage collapsed, half of it was intact, and a small, dusty boy poked his face out in tears as the clear-skinned servant girl nervously lifted her skirts and ran that way. Ning's right hand probed out lightning fast and heaved her to the ground. The thin branches overhead shattered into pieces, snapping and snapping, obscuring one's eyes, and amidst the rubble, 2 masked men dressed in black appeared, whistling and hurling 2 metal pellets downward, while the longsword behind their backs was drawn back out of its sheath, piercing the bones with ice and cold. Those 2 whistling metal pills were painted with red dots, and were the kerosene bombs that only the elite of the Great Tang Border Army would be equipped with in small quantities, with extremely horrifying burning power. Ning had been hanging out in the border military camps for years, so naturally he was no stranger to them, and threw away his bow and arrows as fast as he could, reaching for the hilt of his sword behind his back with both hands at the same time as he shouted, "Umbrella!"